Hello, and welcome to ZBrush QuickStart Introduction. This is the first of a 3-part Learn as you grow course aimed at efficiently getting you started sculpting and creating with ZBrush. My name is Pierre. I'm a character artist, a proud girl dad, and a Chicago native that's had the pleasure of studying and creating coursework, tutorials, and assets for ZBrush for over 10 years. If you enjoy CG art or 3D print, digital sculpting with ZBrush is a fun and interactive path into the world of polygons. In this course, we will cover the interface, subdivisions, brushes, and other features you'll need on your journey. Together, we will sculpt several small projects establishing your foundation and comfort for the basic tools and practices. So if you're ready, join me and let's get started. Upon opening ZBrush, you'll be met with a single large viewport surrounded by buttons and other features. By default, ZBrush opens with Lightbox set to the Project tab. Lightbox is ZBrush's means of navigating through project presets, extra brushes, and other resources. Toggle Lightbox on and off by pressing the Lightbox button here. Click and drag to scrub through the selection, and double-click to open any preset. At any time, you can reopen Lightbox and open a new project. This is the most efficient way to get up and started with your ZBrush projects. The best method of navigating around your model is called right-click navigation. It's a simple setup to ensure it's enabled. Open your Preferences menu and expand the interface settings. Next, click on the Navigation tab to find the right-click navigation button. Make sure right-click navigation is highlighted in orange, indicating that it's enabled. Next, click and turn off the Enable Right-Click pop-up button, and we're all done. Rotate around your model by right-clicking and dragging in the viewport or on your model itself. Pan around your model by holding the Alt key while right-clicking and dragging. Keeping in mind we are moving our viewing camera and not necessarily the model. Lastly, zoom in and out of your model by holding the Control key while right-click and dragging. Take some time to practice rotating, zooming, and panning around your model till it becomes natural. Alternatively, you can navigate around your model by clicking and dragging on either of these buttons located here on your interface. The frame button will center your model in the viewport when pressed. Press this button to toggle on the floor grid. Choose to enable a grid for each axis here. Press this button to toggle between perspective view or orthographic view. Import models made in other applications with the Import button here. Navigate to the location of your file and press Open to load. When you're ready to export your model, click the Export button here. Select a place to store your file, name it, click here to select your file format of choice, and lastly press the Save to export. Like most 3D apps, ZBrush has a collection of menus running along the top of the interface, complete with areas to dock them to the sides. The Tool menu by default is docked to the right on your interface and contains most of your comment edits. These menus can be moved and docked to either the left or right of your interface by clicking and dragging this circular icon either to the left or right of your interface and release to place. Clicking the same icon will remove it from being docked. Double-click here to temporarily collapse your docked shelf menus. Open the Preferences tab and inspect the config settings. Here you can save the placement of your menus as well as edits made in the Preferences menu by pressing the Store Config button here. This will store your current setup and load it by default when ZBrush is open. Reset your interface back to ZBrush's default by pressing the Restore Standard UI button. If you want to return to loading the default setup when you open ZBrush, press the Store Config button now. Now we concluded the necessary business of getting set up, as well as moving and saving some UI features. We'll move on to subdivisions and brushes in the next clip. See you there. Dividing your mesh's polygons is your standard method of increasing your resolution in order to achieve higher levels of detail in your sculpt. Do this by opening the geometry subpalette here and pressing the divide button here. Each additional press of the divide button will increase your resolution as well as create a subdivision levels as seen here. You can move up and down this list of levels for editing purposes. For instance, lower levels are ideal for making fast and large form changes, and higher levels are typically exclusive for applying smaller details. Do note that a fair amount of features and brushes won't work with subdivision levels intact. Remove your subdivisions by selecting your highest level via the subdiv slider here. Next, press the delete lower button here. There are other methods of resolution control in ZBrush that we will cover later. Click the brush icon to view and select from over 180 brushes preloaded into ZBrush, with even more brushes accessible through Lightbox. Be sure to follow me on YouTube as I will be creating content to demonstrate every brush in ZBrush. But for now, let's cover the basic set of brushes used for sculpting as well as different types of brushes you have available. The Move brush pushes and pulls portions of your mesh in the direction of choice. Rotate around your model and position yourself in order to manipulate the surface as needed. Hold the Alt key to push and pull in the direction of your surface normals. At any time, press and hold the spacebar key to open a pop-up menu containing easily accessible brush options. Among many other options, use this menu to change the size of your brush, your focal shift which controls how hard or soft of a fall off your brush has, and Z intensity which controls the strength of your brush. The clay brush is a square shaped brush with a flat top finish, good for building form with repeated strokes. Hold the Alt key when brushing to dig into your mesh. Change the tip and look of some of your brushes by adding and swapping alphas. Click the alpha icon and select from a collection of pre-installed alphas. Now when stroking your model, your alpha shape will be applied. At any time, holding the Shift key on your keyboard will toggle on your smooth brush. The standard brush features a round tip with a short fall off. This brush is good for organic sculpting. Using a large brush on a thin portion of your mesh will also affect the backside of your mesh when sculpting. Resolve this by opening up the brush menu and inspecting the auto masking tab. Click to enable backface masking button. Now you will be issue free when using large brushes on the mesh. The damn standard brush carves creases into your mesh. Hold the Alt key to create a raised edge. This brush is ideal for applying creases and semi-sharp edges to your model. At any time, you can enable or disable symmetrical sculpting on your mesh by opening the Transform menu and pressing the Activate Symmetry button. Choose a single axis for symmetry or a combination of axes. The Pinch brush pulls geometry within range to a single point as you brush across your mesh. This brush is ideal for creating sharper edges or closing the gap between areas. View your undo history for each stroke or edit to your mesh here. Click and drag to move backwards or forwards through your undo history. The Polish brush sands down your surface to an eventual flat plane. This brush is ideal for creating smooth and planar surfaces. The H Polish brush is a stronger version of the Polish brush that clips its effects when meeting another hard edge. This brush is ideal for creating flat areas ending with hard edges. Return any brush to its default settings by opening the brush menu and navigating to the bottom and press the Reset Current Brush button. You may also press the Reset All Brushes button to reset all of your brushes to their default settings. Isolate a portion of your mesh for focus work with your selection tools. Hold both Control and Shift keys to activate. Now click and drag across your model to isolate. Hold Ctrl and Shift keys while click and dragging in the background to invert your visible selection. Hold both Ctrl and Shift keys and click in the background to clear your selection. When you want to view the inside of your mesh, open the Display Properties subpalette and enable the double button. At any time, hold the Control key to toggle on your mask pen brush. Use masking to protect portions of your mesh from being affected. ZBrush comes with 8 variations of mask brushes. Hold the Control key and click the brush icon to view your mask brushes. Try out other versions of mask brushes, especially the mask lasso brush, as it is fast and masks everything behind this lasso shape. Invert your mask by holding the Control key and clicking the background of your viewport. Remove all masks from your mesh by holding the Control key while click and dragging in the background of your viewport. Holding Control while clicking on your model will blur your mask. Holding Control and Alt while clicking on your model will sharpen your mask. IMM brushes are a collection of pre-modeled assets. Selecting any IMM brush will pop up a list of included assets. Click and drag to scrub through the list and select a model of choice. Next, proceed to click and drag on your mesh to insert. Be aware that IMM brushes don't work with subdivision levels. Press the W key on your keyboard to activate the Gizmo 3D. This is your means of moving visible and unmasked portions of your mesh around your scene. Easily rotate, scale, and squish geometry with the Gizmo 3D. Holding the Alt key will allow you to reposition your Gizmo 3D. Pressing the GPS icon in the middle will move your Gizmo 3D to the center of your unmasked mesh. Enable LSim when using Gizmo 3D with symmetry enabled for ease of use. Clip brushes use curves and shapes to condense geometry along edges. After selecting the clip curve brush, activate by holding both Shift and Control key. Next, click and drag to draw a line across your mesh. Once released, all geometry on the shaded side of the line will be condensed up to the line. Hold Shift and Control while clicking the brush icon to see and select from other clip brushes. The knife brush works the same as the clip brushes. However, the knife brushes will remove the geometry on the other side of the curve or shape. Hold both Shift and Control key while clicking the brush icon to see other knife brushes. Continue to experiment with this brush set and options. In the next clip, we will put them to use in a sculpting project. Starting things out inside of Lightbox, go ahead and double click the default project and click No to save any current changes. And on screen I have some reference for some mushroom images here. And with a nice large move brush, I'm just pushing the underside up, and from a side view just tweaking the shape of a mushroom cap here. Alright, now we do have symmetry on our x-axis, taking advantage of that as we shape things out here from various camera angles. And as you begin your journey into the world of sculpting, this will become normal to you, moving from many different angles and altering your mesh as you go. Back on the underside now, just pushing and pulling with that move brush. Now in the geometry subpalette, I'm just going to hit divide in order to add a bit more resolution, and continue to use the Alt key with that move brush. I'm going to go ahead and now we have the ability to add radial symmetry to our model in our transform menu. Right underneath these options is the R, which is for radial. If you enable that, you'll see a spiraling of radial dots, but it's not aligned to our model the way we need. So let's change our axis, turn off X and turn on Y, and that is the right axis for our radial symmetry. So now with that damn standard brush, I'm just sculpting the underside of the mushroom. Just trying to get that very fine pattern that's on the underside of mushrooms. I believe they're called the gills. And I'm just making strokes from the center on out and back. Just trying to add a decent amount of contrast with the pen pressure on my tablet. Okay. And this is a very fast way to establish this kind of detail. You could leave symmetry off and do all these by hand, or not by hand but individually. Okay, let's go back to the transform menu and just turn off radial symmetry and back with X symmetry. Nice large move brush. Actually, let's go ahead and turn off symmetry altogether and just add a bit of irregularity to our mushroom cap. I'm going to tweak my brush size with a clay brush, up my Z intensity, and start to sculpt out some of these bumps that are on the mushroom cap, possibly fungus related. Now this mushroom on the top that we're referencing is actually poisonous, so if you actually do see it, don't touch it. Now with the IMM primitive brush, I'm going to select a cylinder and go to the top, just trying to find a flat place to insert it. And ZBrush is giving me a message saying that I need to get rid of my subdivision levels. And now we can draw in that cylinder. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out and activate my Gizmo 3D, pressing the Y key. Center it and placing the stem in location. Make sure to check from multiple angles to place it. And clear our mask. And now that we got that, I want to insert a sphere down here. And I'm going to use this to create a would-be base for our mushrooms. So with a nice medium to large move brush, I'm just stretching this along the way, changing my camera angles and just stretching this out like so. And I'll hit it with a little bit of smoothing, holding the shift key there, and back to just trying to shape this up. And I'm just embracing the whole organic vibe of it all. Just imagine it being a lump of dirt that we probably put out the ground with some mushrooms attached. Now activate your Gizmo 3D, hold Control, click and drag, and you can unmask solid pieces of geometry in your model. This is called topological masking in ZBrush. With the inflate brush, just inflating the top and bottom portions of the stem here, just to add a bit more variety and look a little bit more interesting, similar to our reference as well. And now I'm going to perform a subdivide only on the unmasked portions of our model here. Subdivide twice, and this is a tip for just subdividing areas you want. And holding shift key, I'm just smoothing out that faceted look, which is a result of masking unmasked portions instead of the entire model or models. Alright, just about done with that part. Now I want to create a few more stems to create our group of 3 here. So I'm going to go ahead and use a Gizmo 3D. Hold Control, click and drag to unmask the stem. Now hold Control, click and drag on any of the white corners to duplicate. Now I'm just scaling down this duplicate stem and placing it like so. Just getting it into position. Alright. And now with my move brush, I'm just going to continue to manipulate, add a bit of interest to this stem. And later on we'll get some caps to add to these stems. Just duplicated the original once again. And we're going to perform a different set of manipulations to add some character to this stem here. I started out with scaling it upwards and moving it towards the middle. And now with the pinch brush, I'm just squeezing in the middle section, making it look a little bit more elongated. Alright. And now with a nice large move brush, I'm just adding a few shifts here. And from this angle a little bit as well. Just adding a bit of interest. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and clear my mask. And next we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the cap here. Control, click, drag. And place one up here. I just centered my Gizmo 3D. Alt click on the spiral to reset your transforms. And now I'm just placing this cap like so. Alright, Control, click and drag to unmask the original. And Control, click and drag to duplicate. And I'm going to make this one smaller and place it on the small stem. Just making sure to rotate my camera and see where we are. Just placing my Gizmo 3D again, and I'm going to squish it down using that green scale icon and tilting it a bit from this angle. Just trying to give it a whole different look here. Now with the move brush, we're going to add a bit of irregularity, give it its own personality, like so. Okay, let's go ahead and unmask this cap, and I'm going to perform some edits on it as well. I'm going to squash it in using that red scale rectangle there and a blue from this angle. Create more of a bell shape. Now with the move brush, I'm just kind of pushing and pulling all the way around, adding more irregularity, and just continue to work this as much as you want here. Okay, unmask the base here and continue to edit that, pull it out, make sure it encapsulate our little scene here, and pull it up. All right, pretty happy with that. Now let's go ahead and unmask everything and continue to make nudges. Nudges is a very big part of sculpting. Okay. And now with the damn standard brush, I'm just sculpting a sort of tree trunk pattern here. Kind of deviating from the typical stem pattern. Now instead of working unobstructed from other parts of your model, you can solve this by using your selection tool by just clicking after activating and clicking again to unhide the other portion. Now this is related to polygroups actually, and we'll talk more about polygroups in a future video. But for now, just know using your selection tools to click on portions of your mesh will hide different portions. Okay, just took some time to spread this pattern down these stems here. No real rhyme or reason, I'm just drawing strokes and having them interconnect with each other. Okay, you can always spend as much time as you like refining your stems. I'm just about done with these here. A little bit of smooth brush in there as well. And continue to restroke some of these in areas, maybe with a little bit more pressure, just trying to increase the contrast of these visuals here, even up into the cap, like so. Okay, a little bit more in here, and now I'm going to unmask this stem here, and with the move brush I'm just going to continue to edit it. So even with our trunk design sculpted in there, we can continue to play with the shape here. Alright, so a little bit more sculpting here, and we're just about done with our little project here, and we only used a handful of brushes. Now I'll disable perspective, and I'm going to use a clip brush to clip the base here, get it nice and flat, which is the main reason of turning off perspective. Works more accurately with it off. Now continue to make as many changes as you want on your mushrooms, but that does conclude this clip. And the next we will work on Matcaps and Polypaint. See you there. Change the look of your mesh by clicking the material button here to view and select from several materials known as Matcaps to apply to your model. In order to paint your model, start by selecting a light color Matcap like Skin Shade 4. Open the Polypaint tab in your tool menu and press the Colorize button. This will make your mesh paintable. Next, select the paintbrush and your color of choice with the color wheel here. Now you're set to start painting on your model. The resolution of your paint is determined by the poly count of your model. Divide your model to increase the resolution. Flood your entire mesh with a single color by opening the color menu and select your color of choice. Once done, press the Fill Object button here. Make sure your RGB intensity slider is at 100 to perform a full opaque color fill. Use either the pop-up menu or interface sliders to edit the paintbrush settings. Use a focal shift slider to switch between sharp edge paintbrush or a soft edge paintbrush. Use RGB intensity slider to control the amount of paint flow coming through your brush. Turn your smooth brush into a blur brush by holding the shift key to activate. Now disable the Z Add button here. This will disable the smooth brush's ability to smooth geometry. Remember to turn this back on in order to smooth geometry. View only your model's paint information by opening the render menu and press the flat button here. This removes all the shading from your model. Return back to normal shaded view by pressing the preview button here. Toggle your Polypaint on and off with the colorize button here. Let's paint our mushroom set here, starting with the skin shade 4 matte cap on. I'm going to pick a light cream color and use that for our stems. Just hitting the fill object to flood the whole mesh. I just use the selection tool to isolate the caps. Now with a reddish orange color, I'm going to go ahead and press fill object with this selection visible. I'll apply red to only the visible portions of the mesh. Just bring back everything else now. Next, I'm just going to click and drag from the color wheel to sample that cream color. I'm going to apply that to the underside of our caps here. And just loosely moving it all the way around. And I'm going to do the same here to this one. Be aware of the size of your brush because it can go through your mesh, and paint on the back side. Just going to use our selection tool to hide that cap so I can easily paint the last one here, like so. Alright, now we got that done. Let's go ahead and bring everything back. Let's go ahead and isolate the caps again. I'm just gonna click and drag to sample that red color, and now I'm just gonna make it a bit darker. So I'm gonna add a bit of a darker color around the edges of our mushroom caps, just to add a bit of variation here. You can do whatever color combination you want. Maybe yours are purple or yellow or something like that. And just moving along between these caps here, just loosely following that. Keep in mind your RGB intensity will affect how much paint comes through. So if you want maybe a lighter application, you can lower your Z intensity, or you can just work from background to foreground color to give yourself a better transition. Alright, I think that's pretty good. Got that just about wrapped up. Then we're going to apply one more red color here before we move on to another color. I'm going to go up to the top here and make sure backface masking is enabled on my paintbrush, and this will make sure you don't paint the backside of your mesh with large brushes. Now we're going to pick a brighter red, and I'm just going to paint that right at the peak of our mushroom caps here. Once again, just for variation. Alright, now we got that done. I'm just going to click and drag to sample that stem color again. And now I'm going to take some time and apply that color to these little bumps that we sculpted onto our mushroom caps here, like so, all the way around. You can really get some good value out of poly painting in ZBrush. It's really really easy to grasp. Alright, I think that does that on that one. And of course we'll use the same color on the other dots on the other caps here. Now we got that all done, I'm going to use Control click to unmask the base here. And now with a brownish color, I'm just filling out here. I'm going to go ahead and fill object on that and then clear my mask to see what it looks like. I think that works pretty well together. Now let's select that cream color again, and I'm going to desaturate it a bit, and I'm just going to kind of sculpt in, not sculpt, but paint in some areas here, mostly in the crevices, just to give us some extra values in here, so that it's not just a flat color. We added a couple values to the cap, so we gotta at least do 2 on the stem here. Alright, I got those all painted. Let's go ahead and move on. Sample that dark red color, make it a bit darker. Alright, now with a smaller brush, I'm just gonna paint in some of these crevices along the edges of the mushroom cap. Just trying to add a bit more detail here, like so. You can do that everywhere or sparingly all around your mushroom caps. And now with that part all done, let's go up to the render menu, and you can press flat to view just your color information, something to check out every now and then and see where you might want to add more values, and just turn back to render to view it as normal. Polypainting your model is a great way to up the presentation value of your models or to spec out colors for a project down the line. The Subtool palette houses the many parts of your project. It's standard practice to split your project into individual subtools for easy management between various poly counts. Each subtool has its own set of subdivision levels. Use the solo button here momentarily to view your selected subtool only. Use the transparency button here in order to see through all of your unselected subtools. Some project presets open with a few subtools. Clicking the eye icon will toggle the visibility of an unselected subtool. The most important buttons here include the duplicate button, as it will duplicate your currently highlighted subtool. The append button will open a menu with primitives to select and add to your subtool list. From here you can place it with the Gizmo 3D, divide a few times, and begin sculpting. The delete button will delete your currently highlighted subtool. ZBrush will let you know that this cannot be undone, so be sure before pressing OK. Open the Split tab to find the Split Hidden button. This button requires a portion of your mesh or subtool to be hidden with the selection tools. Once set, press the Split Hidden button to separate a hidden portion into its own subtool. Click and drag in order to rearrange and reposition your subtools. Open the Merge tab. Pressing the Merge Down button will merge your currently highlighted subtool with the subtool below it. Pressing the Merge Visible button will merge all subtools with visibility enabled into a new Z tool that can be found up here. Draw a mask shape on your model using the Control key. Next, open the Extract tab and press the Extract button. Extract allows you to generate new geometry from your mask. This, however, is a preview that will vanish when you move your camera or change your settings to fine-tune your results with the smooth slider that will smooth your edges and the thickness slider that will change the height of your abstraction. When done, press the Accept button to generate the new geometry as a new subtool. The new subtool has a mask applied to it that you can simply clear. Easily jump from subtool to subtool with a simple setup. Open the Preferences menu and expand the Edit tab and press the Auto Select Subtool button. Now hold the Alt key and click on another subtool to jump to that subtool. This will make it easier to move around. Be sure to press Store Config in the Config settings to save this to your default ZBrush loadup. Open the File menu and press Save As to save your current project. Here you also have the option to save your undo history. Leaving this enabled will create larger save files and likely longer save times. By default, ZBrush auto-saves your project every 20 minutes. In the event of a crash, you can locate your last autosave by opening up Lightbox and select the Quick Save tab. Scrub to the far right to available quick saves to find the last file beginning with the letters Q, S, followed by a series of numbers. Double click to load and pick up where you left off. Open the Geometry sub-palette and expand the Modify Topology tab. In here are a couple of must-know buttons that don't work with subdivisions. Mirror and Weld will mirror over an axis selected here and weld along the middle. Delete unwanted portions of your mesh by using the selection tools. Hold Alt to turn red and hide the highlighted portion. Next, press the Delete Hidden button. Close all open edges on your mesh by pressing the Close Holes button here. Open the Deformation sub-palette and locate the Inflate slider near the bottom. Using this slider will inflate all visible unmasked geometry. Lastly, open the Preferences menu and expand the Quick Info settings. Enabling the Quick Info button will allow you to receive additional information about most interface items and buttons simply by hovering and holding the Control key. This will be a big help towards learning about things in ZBrush. Group portions of your model for quick selections for future use with Polygroups. Pressing the Polyframe button here will view both the wireframe of your mesh and your polygroups. Press both Ctrl plus W key to polygroup all visible geometry. A new random color is generated with every press. Also create polygroups with the use of the selection tools to isolate. Next, press Ctrl plus W key to polygroup. Isolate and hide polygroups by holding both Ctrl and Shift key while clicking on a polygroup. Polygroup mask portions of your mesh by pressing both Ctrl and W key. With polygroups on your mesh, Control click to quickly unmask that polygroup. Dynamesh is an alternative to subdivisions. Change the resolution of your mesh at any time, as well as use any feature or brush non-exclusive to subdivision levels. Open the Geometry sub-palette and expand the Dynamesh tab. Set your resolution here and press the Dynamesh button to enter Dynamesh mode. With Polyframe enabled, you will see your polygons layout replaced with smaller, evenly distributed polygons. At any time, you may change your resolution and redistribute polygons by redynameshing. Hold Ctrl, click, and drag in the background to redynamesh your model. Click to enable the Groups option for Dynamesh and redynamesh your model. This will tell Dynamesh to split your polygroups into individual meshes. Dynamesh is ideal for freeform sculpting and can be applied to every subtool individually. With Lightbox open, double-click the Dynamesh sphere project and click Notice Saving Changes, And we'll use this sphere to create our Among Us Imposter Mutant Monster. I'm going to go ahead and open the Geometry tab and navigate down to Dynamesh and just check out our settings here. As Dynamesh is already enabled, I turned off perspective, masked off or unmasked the top, and pulling it upward to create that capsule-like shape for the body. Alright, and now in the subtool list, I'm going to go ahead and pick append and click a cylinder 3D. I'm going to alt click to go to that subtool, and now we're going to make some edits to this to make it into a leg. Just enable transparency. You got the option between ghost mode on and off. Helps you see through your mesh to help place things. And just move that leg over to one side and scaling and moving it into place. And now from the side view, I continue to scale things out here. Squashed it inward with the red rectangle. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's go into Geometry subpalette, Modify Topology, and Mirror and Weld to get our other leg. Next, let's go into Dynamesh, our legs here. And now we have that set. Let's enable symmetry in the transform menu. And let's perform a smooth on our legs to get rid of some of that faceted geometry, at least the look of it. Nice and smooth. Okay, now let's do the same for the body shape, which we stretched earlier. And if we tried to sculpt on it, we see something like this. Let's go ahead and Dynamesh, and now we can sculpt on it if we want it. For now, we're just going to do a bit of smoothing, get rid of those edges. Alright, and now zoomed out a bit here. I'm going to use the mask pen to draw out the little visor area to what I think is his spacesuit, and just Control Alt click to sharpen and invert the mask. In deformation, we're going to navigate to inflate and inflate a bit just to extrude. Try it again from this angle. That's pretty good. You can also use the Gizmo 3D to manipulate your unmasked geometry. Okay, now let's go up back into our geometry tablet and just go ahead and re-Dynamesh. Okay, we don't need any more resolution just yet. Make my brush nice and small. A little test stroke. I'm going to go into Preferences tab, open tablet, and disable use tablet. It is a good trick to get a nice flat stroke without any pen pressure variance. So now I'm just tracing that visor with this mask brush here, mask pen brush, and I just Control click to sharpen our mask. And we're going to perform the same edit with the inflate deformation. Just navigate to the bottom and click and drag to inflate. Okay, that's not bad. It's not bad. Let's go undo our blur even and do the inflate. See how that looks. That's a bit better. It's a bit cleaner. Just gonna apply a bit of smooth while still masked. Alright, that's pretty good. And now we got the bases of his helmet visor. Just going to increase our resolution for Dynamesh, then remesh. And now I'm just going to apply a little bit of smoothing to get rid of some of those artifacts that weren't too clean. A little move brush. Oh, let's undo that. Let's go back into our preferences and turn back on use tablet. Because now I want to use the damn standard brush to just trace the outside of this visor here. Just trying to clean things up a bit. It's a nice stroke. Just trying to make as few strokes as possible in my attempt to keep it somewhat clean. Alright. Zoom out a bit. Try to find a good angle for sweeping your arm across these kind of strokes. Okay. I think that's pretty good for what we're going for. Now back to the legs here. Just to make them a bit shorter by pulling them up using the Gizmo 3D. Keep in mind this is a separate subtool. And now over here for the deformations, we're gonna go back to our inflate, and that just performed an undo of some sort to our position. So let's go ahead and make our legs shorter and tuck them back into his body like so. That looks about right. Okay, now from the profile view, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off perspective, and with the knife brush, double alt click to change angle and release to cut out a section for his mouth here. Alright, and now I'm going to draw the mask for the top portion. I'm going to control click to blur our mask, and now invert it. Alright, multiple steps here. Alt click to move the Gizmo 3D, and now I'm just rotating the mouth backwards just to get an angle similar to our little reference image down there. Okay, and now with the move brush, I'm just pulling some stuff around, knowing that when I Dynamesh, everything is going to kind of blend together. That's overlapped and penetrating. Okay, I'm just performing a bit of smooth all the way around. Now with some clay brush, fill in some holes or gaps. Now with the move brush, I'm holding the Alt key to push the surface inward like so, and create more of a cavity for his mouth. Alright, just continue to push and pull. As you can see, the legs are popping out just then. Now to the side, just playing with the corners of the mouth here. Okay, just use a little clay brush to fill that hole there. And now from this angle, I'm just going to use the clay brush to draw on some gums. I'm just going to start from the middle. This way I want to avoid creating a single tooth in the middle from bad spacing. Okay, just building up some gums for our creepy mutant imposter. Alright, and now with that move brush, alt click and drag, I'm able to pull out something that resembles teeth like so. You get a lot of range out of the move brush. So I'm going to repeat the same steps for the bottom of the mouth. Just drawing some gums first, or sculpting out some gums. And now with that move brush and the right size, and I'm at the right camera angle, it's also very important to just alt click and drag and create some points. And we can still continue to modify with our move brush, changing our camera angles, turning perspective back on to get a good idea what it would look like if it was real or in reality. Okay, and I'm just making some edits here, pulling some of this inward, not to create too much of a bulge. Trying to maintain this profile for the most part. And now with the clay brush, I'm just trying to sculpt in some more organic shapes in here. Get things looking real menacing. With some textures in here, just overlapping strokes. Alright, now back to the move brush to continue to push a section inward. Just trying to create a nice cavity. I plans to make this tongue as well, so I want a nice place to put that. Alright, moving on here. I'm going to scroll down our subtool palette here, open up merge and merge down. Okay, and just merge the legs to the body. And I'm going to open geometry tab and just go ahead and increase our resolution a little bit, and Dynamesh, see what we have. It's usually a trial and error process of finding the right resolution. So oftentimes I find myself just undoing, changing my resolution, and remeshing. Okay, back up here to the teeth. I'm just applying a round of smoothing all the way around, like so. Now the clay brush, I'm just playing around with some support textures underneath these gums, or what would be the rim of his mouth, just so it doesn't fall off into just smoothness. That is his body. These really do resemble minions now that I'm looking at it. Just zoom out here and just making some more tweaks with the move brush. As I said earlier, you'll be doing lots of nudging. Alright, and now with the damn standard brush, I'm just tracing the base of those cones that are his teeth, and just creating a separation between the teeth and the gums with this hard line. You can even use it around the gums just to create more of a contrast. Makes them look more ferocious and menacing, and gives a bit more definition to the forms you're establishing. And this is where you're having a tablet really shines. This would be really difficult using the mouse. Okay, but possible. Very possible. Now using the selection tool, just isolated the mouth area here. And actually I'm going to go ahead and isolate the top portion so I can access the back. And this is something you want to do just to get full access to areas you're trying to sculpt, as well as just focus on areas. It's a good means of using the selection tools. Okay, just inverted my visibility, and I'm just gonna hold Alt when using selection tools. Okay, and just pretty much perform the same thing down here with the damn standard brush. And hopefully at this point you can really see the mileage you can get out of just a handful of brushes in ZBrush. Doing the same from the front here, bottom row. Just running around the base of these teeth, like so. And a little bit more. Just create some strokes in here between the gums. Kind of the attention grabbing part of this piece. Okay. A little bit more around the underside of the visor here. Next, go to the Subtool menu and click the Pen button and append a Sphere 3D. Navigate to the Sphere 3D, and now we will manipulate this into his tongue. So now I'm just scaling it down transparency to see it inside of his head. And I'm just going to use the squash and stretch gizmos to lengthen out his tongue here. Alright, just getting into position as well. Pretty good. And from here, I think we can just use brushes. A nice large pinch brush. Taper it towards the front. Move brush to stretch it. And let's see next. Just gonna try using the move brush. Just kind of whiten the base. Continue to use the move brush. Kind of alter the shape of this tongue. Something a bit more irregular. Okay, zoom out a bit. Push these angles a bit more. Like I said, texture is definitely rough. If you pull this slider here, you can control the amount that's viewable in your subtool palette. Let's navigate to the Geometry tab and enable Dynamesh. And I think we're going to need a bit more geometry. Let's go ahead and increase it a bit and remesh. Apply some smoothing, and I think we're ready to use the damn standard brush on the underside. Now with transparency and ghost on. This way you can sculpt through your models as well with ghost on. Okay, and just some loose strokes to kind of form a bit of a texture here, like so. And now with the standard brush, I'm just trying to accentuate the same type of design here. Just gonna run that along the center here. trying to get a couple of waves in here. And the polish brush to kind of flatten things out a bit. Similar to our tongues. Okay. And the standard brush to carve in a little bit of a divot. Okay. Alright, I like the direction that's headed. More of the damn standard. Add some more contrast. And just keep going. Trying out some clay brush. See what type of textures I can create here. Back to the standard brush. And zooming out to see what we have. Okay. Back to the body. Just using a move brush to tweak some areas here. Just pushing and pulling and applying some smoothing. And lower my Z intensity. Apply a bit of clay brush in here to kind of fill in this crevice. Just trying to make it smoother. More of that low Z intensity clay. Remember, clay brush will fill in holes and crevices. More move brush. Alright. I think that looks a bit better. More smooth brush. Never have too much move brush. Okay. Just tweaking with the move brush. Okay. Now let's head back up to the pin button. And this time I pin a cylinder 3D like we did for the leg. I'm going to go to the cylinder 3D by alt clicking. I use isolate or solo button, I should say. And the Gizmo 3D to stretch and flatten and place at the bottom as a base. Okay. I turn on Dynamesh, and now with symmetry on, I'm just smoothing all the way around like so. A little bit more. Scale it up a bit. Flatten it a bit more. And I think that's our base for now. Let's move back up to the subtool palette. Let's go back to the body. I'm going to click duplicate. Activate my Gizmo 3D. And move the duplicate body outward. Like so. Okay. Kind of want it out of the way, but I want to keep it in the center. So undo that. I'll click to reset my transforms. And just pull upwards. Since we still have symmetry on, if we move off the center line, it'll stretch as you saw earlier. Let's turn off perspective. And now with a clip brush, I'm going to attempt to clip this right here. And as you see, create a bit of a lip here of extra geometry. And that's something to be careful of when using your clip brush. So instead, we're going to go ahead and use the knife brush, which gets rid of the excess geometry, like so. And I'm just going to fill in this gap with the clay brush. And I'm just smoothing around the edge. And this is a set piece. This will be one of the half body little victims that are left behind once the monster strikes, or the imposter strikes. I haven't actually played the game, I've watched a decent amount of people playing it though, but I get the gist of it. Okay, now with the mask pen brush, I'm just gonna create a mask just for the inside of this area here. Okay, just gonna sharpen that by Control Alt clicking, Control click to invert, and now I'm going to activate the Gizmo 3D. And if you Alt click on the surface, it will position your Gizmo 3D there. Pushing downward to inset that unmasked geometry. And if you want, you can kind of pull things out, create a bit of a bevel while things are still masked. Clear my mask. And we got a bit of a low resolution here, so good time to remesh. And now smooth. And that is the beauty of using Dynamesh. Just change your resolution at will, increasing it and decreasing it whenever, for whatever reason. Okay, let's go back to a pen, and we're going to do another cylinder 3D, and we're going to move this upwards, scale it downwards, and stretch it a bit. And we're going to use this to form the bone that's in the middle of the half-bodied little victim here. Alright, sticking that in the center. And now we're going to go ahead to Geometry tab and press Dynamesh to put this subtool into Dynamesh mode. Let's up our resolution a bit, remesh by clearing the mask, and get things nice and smooth. Okay, so now we're going to go down to deformation, and we're going to go down to inflate just to thicken it up a bit, because there's a pretty big bone. And now I'm going to go ahead and increase our resolution and Dynamesh once again. And with that done, we're going to use an inflate brush and making kind of tiny circles, or half circles, creating the joint part of the bone. Okay, move brush to continue to manipulate the form, holding Alt sometimes to push and pull outwards and inwards, like so. And now with the damn standard, just kind of create a bit of a crease, get that nice cartoon bone look. Alright, a little bit lower here. You can always smooth things out. They're too intense. Okay, I think that is a pretty decent representation. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and reposition things in our subtool menu here. I'm going to move the bone above the half body, so that now when I go down here to merge down and click OK, it will merge the bone and the body together on the same subtool. Alright, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and move this down here in front of the little monster imposter. And I'm realizing that we're missing one piece. We got to add the little backpack that's on the back of both of them here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click the append button and click Cube 3D. Unhide everything from solo mode. And we're just going to go ahead and use our handles here to squish this into a more of a rectangular shape. Put it into place. Now I got to kind of bend this to match the angle of its back here. So I'm going to place it here like so. And I'm going to unmask the top portion, and I'm just going to rotate it. And I'm going to use Dynamesh, so I'm not going to bother about the overlap and penetration here. Alright, let's go to reset our transform. I just want to squish it in a bit more. Felt like it was a bit too thick. Alright, so let's go back down here in Dynamesh. And now with a nice large move brush, let's undo that. Don't have symmetry on. A nice large move brush with symmetry. I'm also smoothing here and there as well. I'm just tweaking the shape. Now it is starting to lose its straight edge here, but we can come back in and reestablish those. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Now with the clip curve brush, I'm gonna drag a curve out here and use spacebar. You can move your curve around before releasing. Do the same for the top here. Just clipping these little angles here. And just like that, we got our edges back nice and straight. Let's go ahead and Dynamesh that at a higher resolution. Apply a bit of smoothings. And we're good. Now I'm just going to go up into our subtool menu. Click duplicate. Bring up the Gizmo 3D. And put it into place. And now we're going to try to clip this. Undo that and use a knife brush this time. And that one works. Alright, so now he's got his little backpack on. It's been also chopped off or bit off. I'm just going to squash it down a bit. Okay. And now I'm going to place this above the half body so we can click the merge down and click always so that it will not pop up next time we click merge down. Okay. Just squishing down this backpack again. And now it's time to place our half body on our stage here. Let's undo that. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off symmetry so that we can place him off the center. And I'm just going to scale him down just a bit. Just rotate from this angle and rotate the body. Squash him down a little bit. My idea is that he's probably deflated a little since he's been eaten. Okay. Now control click and drag to duplicate. And we'll have another guy to stage here. Help set the scene. just rotating it. My goal is just to get this body to look somewhat different in position than the other body. So I'm just rotating it and manipulating it to look as if it's actually laying on the ground here. Okay, I don't mind a little penetration with the base. Okay, back to the main body, and now with a clay brush I'm going to go ahead and turn on symmetry. Holding Alt key, I'm just going to start to sculpt in some little recesses to make them look a bit more mutant or zombie-esque. To be missing patches of skin on the surface. And it's a simple texture just by creating a circle or round shape and then layering up the brush on top of each other. Gives the look of some pitting. Okay, just continue to do that sparingly in areas, changing shape and placement. Probably one more here. It's probably good. Alright, just moving around, just seeing what else we could work on here before concluding. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pose the mouth here. Just turn off perspective and dragging out a mask. And I'm just switching my mask pen to the mask lasso. Once again, that's by holding Control key and clicking on the brush menu, and that'll show you your other masking brushes. Okay, now with the top part of the head unmasked and our Gizmo 3D in position, just move that down here, holding Alt key that is, and perform a slight rotation like so. And it just adds a bit more to his look here. Now we could just use Dynamesh to fix any overlapping. Just go ahead and remesh, form a bit of smoothing. That's up, but that just about does it. As I said before, I hope you can really see the power of just a handful of brushes and some of the key features available in ZBrush, such as Dynamesh here. You see in this version I played with the tongue, and that was just by using a nice large move brush. In the next clip we'll cover another means of resolution, which is Sculptris Pro. See you there. Sculptris Pro mode is a real-time resolution modifier for your brushes. Be aware Sculptris Pro doesn't work with subdivision levels. When Sculptris Pro is enabled, your cursor will turn purple as indication. Brushing across your model will add extra polygons in that area. The amount of resolution applied to your mesh is set by the size of your brush. Small brushes will add more resolution than large brushes. Holding the Shift key to smooth will turn your brush orange as indication. A large smooth brush will reduce polygons in that area. A small smooth brush will add polygons in that area. Let's start our project out in Lightbox by double clicking the Cube 3D project. Click No to save in our current project settings. And as you can tell, we'll be sculpting a slice a pizza here. I'm going to go ahead and delete lower to get rid of our subdivision levels. And next I want to kind of scale this down to make the thin piece of crust shape. And now I'm going to Dynamesh, and you can use Dynamesh with Sculptris Pro. Just know that any additional geometry created with the brushes will change when you Dynamesh your model, but they do actually work pretty well together. So just turned off perspective, and my plan is to use the knife brush to just slice like so from the middle onto the corner. Let's actually undo that. If you pick the right side when using your knife brushes, symmetry will actually work fine. So let's try this side, and that worked out, and that just cleared away all that geometry on the side of that curve, giving us a nice triangle. Just scaling things a bit more with the Gizmo 3D. I think that's a good, nice piece of slice shape. I'm just turning on Sculptris Pro, and from a 3/4 view, just smoothing a bit. Okay, could probably stand to turn down my smoothing a bit, or just lightly tap. Good example of pin pressure and Z intensity. So now I'm going to append a cylinder 3D. I'm going to alt click to go to that subtool. Use Gizmo 3D to scale down the cylinder. Rotate the cylinder. If you hold shift, it will snap to degrees when rotating there. And now I'm just stretching it out the length of our piece of slice, and this allows me to edit the crust separately from the base of the pizza. Alright, let's go down to deformations and use a bit of inflate just to get the kind of thickness that we need for that crust. Alright, and now from a nice angle here, I'm going to use Sculptris Pro and shift to smooth, and as you can see, it's adding geometry. I'm just stretch out this crust a bit more, and I want to simulate a cut from an actual knife or pizza slicer with the knife brush. So now we have more of a straight edge to work with on our ends, and it gave us a little bit of extra geometry. I'm just gonna isolate with the selection tool, navigate to modify topology within the geometry subpalette, and I hit delete hidden. A bit more smoothing. Okay, just gonna stretch it a bit more. Now Sculptris Pro has some settings you can control inside the stroke menu. Now with the brush that has Sculptris Pro mode on, you can edit this subdivide value here, and that will simply add more triangles when you use Sculptris Pro. So it's technically adding more resolution the lower you make this slider. So that's one way of controlling your resolution as you work, for adding more resolution or just smoothing out your mesh when you're using Sculptris Pro. Now keep in mind, Sculptris Pro is still more intensive than using natural brushes or brushes without Sculptris Pro. So what you'll see people do from time to time is isolate portions of their model using the selection tools. Just using the move brush, holding the alt key to push and pull to give the base of our piece of slice here a bit of irregularity, look less geometric, more like a lump of something. applying a bit of smoothing, changing my brush size so as not to reduce too much geometry. Okay. And as I said, Sculptris Pro is mostly for detailing, but you can definitely use it to create pieces like this. So now I'm just trying to give this crust more of a, I guess, square shape or less of a round shape. Trying to find a happy medium between the cartoonish look and an actual slice of pizza. Just using a bit of polish here, just to flatten things out a bit more. Alright, let's head in the right direction. Just going back into the stroke menu, lower my subdivide a bit more. And that's pretty much Sculptris Pro. With the use of those settings in there, you can definitely learn to get the most out of it. So even this small of a brush is giving me a bit more resistance and timing. It's a bit more lag. But if I was to isolate this piece in my viewport, it would improve performance. Or for a brush this size, it's probably worth just turning off Sculptris Pro. So you have lots of options as far as your brushes and approaches to resolution here. Let's go ahead and turn off RGB there. That's a way to turn off color that some brushes have on. Okay, I'm just running it across the edge, holding Alt, using the clay brush. And I don't necessarily want a clean bevel, but I just wanted to make that edge less smooth. And just seeing where it takes us. Alright, on both sides I had turned off symmetry quite some time ago. Alright, I'm back to that move brush. Just trying to get this to look a little bit more interesting here. And this is the top cheese layer of our pizza ultimately. So I'm trying to get something that looks a bit more enticing, I guess. Applying a bit more polish, trying not to get it too lumpy. Now from the side view here, just turn it off perspective, just moving the crust forward a bit, kind of level it out with the crust itself. Alright, back to the pizza, and what we're going to do is just take the damn standard brush, and I'm just going to carve kind of a line between the crust and the cheese, because you would see a bit of an indication because we have a layer of, I say, tomato sauce typically in there, so that would give a little bit of a divide, maybe even see some extra ingredients in there. Okay, I'm back to the crust here. Just gonna make some edits with my move brush, just kind of pulling it down and up, just trying to consistently add some irregularity. Okay, I think our crust has a pretty decent shape for now. Let's go back to the pizza slice subtool here. I'm going to turn off symmetry, and I'm just going to draw a mask out here. And these will be the pepperoni on our pizza slice here. I'm just trying to keep the shapes somewhat similar, even some off the edge. They'll get cut, similar to our reference image there. I Control-Alt-Click to sharpen the mask, and now we're just cleaning up the edges. I'm going to go up to the Subtool palette, open Extract, and click Extract. That looks pretty good, so let's just go ahead and click Accept to generate. Now we are actually on the pepperoni subtool, so I'm just using solo mode to view just that subtool. And now I'm just smoothing. You see, kind of got some hard edges here. Just smoothing things out. And Sculptris Pro naturally gives things a softer look when you smooth. Okay, so now with a move brush, I'm just editing the size and overall shape of these pieces of pepperoni. Okay, I think we have just the right amount actually. So that's why it's great to have reference and creating something. And I'm just pulling off a bit of extra geometry off the sides of these pepperonis. I'm gonna perform a bit of an end plate to make them a bit thicker, a bit bolder. Okay. And now with that done, we'll go ahead and grab our knife brush, and we're gonna cut these pepperonis that are right at the edge here, just to get more of a hard edge look, because it was cut. Just hit it with a little bit of a smooth, just to not be super sharp. So now with a smaller move brush, I'm gonna wiggle some of these points around, trying to make this pepperoni look less cookie cutter shape. Okay, not too much. I don't want it to get too much attention. Alright, so now with the standard brush, I'm just running it along the edges of the pepperoni because they tend to curl up a little bit around the edges. If you ever took a little bit of a look at a pepperoni, got a little extra definition around the edges, possibly from the casing. And just running it around the edge like so. Maybe even a little smooth if needed. All the way around. Alright, now from a 3/4 view here, I'm going to use a Gizmo 3D and just thicken up the pizza slice base and push it back a bit. Okay. Now I'm going to size up my brush and do a bit more pushing and pulling with that move brush. Just trying to level things out a bit here. Okay. And now back with the standard brush. Just adding a few more strokes to that line dividing our cheese and our crust. Nothing too particular in detail. And now with the polish brush, I'm just running this along the edges, just trying to flatten them out a bit. And with polyframe on, you can see our density. As we're using these smaller sculpting brushes, you'll see more denser pockets of geometry. Let's go back to the crust for a bit. I'm gonna try adding a little bit of detail with the damn standard brush. Applying a little smooth as well. Some nice deeper crevices here and there. Nice faint strokes here and there. Okay. Now with the Chisel Organic brush, there's some textures towards the back. I'm just going to click and drag this onto the surface. As you can see, it affects the back as well, and we don't want that, so let's open the brush menu, open auto masking, click back face masking. So now when we're using this brush, I'm turned off Sculptris Pro mode. Now when we're using this brush, it won't affect the rear. Okay. Now we could use Sculptris Pro on this, but it's really not worth the lag here. Now, a thing that happens with these chisel brushes, sometimes they don't update when you're clicking. So sometimes you have to click off and click on other brushes. Okay. Now, lower our Z intensity a bit. And I think that is a nice texture to add to the cheese side, especially considering the angle we're holding it at. It kind of looks like the cheese is running a bit. Okay, I'm just changing the scaling and the position, combined with the layering of the pepperoni slices. It's easy to hide our repeating texture here. To get the most out of one texture. So now I'm just hitting things up with a bit of smooth, regular smooth brush. That's with Sculptris Pro off. And now back to move. And when you get to some of the finer details, you likely want to disable Sculptris Pro for smoothing, as it doesn't allow you to keep as much detail. Okay, I want to kind of mimic some drips here and there. Nothing as heavy as the more cartoon version of pizza, but just kind of a subtle dripping by carving into the cheese here. All right. About another one down here, just a light sketching out with a little bit of smooth afterwards. Okay. And now I'm just masking out the portion of the cheese here. I want to create a nice little drip, extending the cheese portion. So I just unmask that portion. Instead of turning on Sculptris Pro just yet, I'm just going to pull down with my move brush. Alright. Perform a bit of inflate. Okay, a bit of smoothing. A bit more inflate. And now with the move brush, kind of tweaking the shape all the way around. I'm gonna enable Sculptris Pro. Size my brush down and smooth. Kind of fix any overlapping geometry from the inflate. Okay, I think that's fixed that. Just zooming out now, see how things look with the drip. Apply a bit more inflate here. And next I'm going to turn off Sculptris Pro and perform a bit of pinch here above the drip. Now let's go ahead and alt click to switch to our pepperoni subtool. Now we're going to add some texture to the gizmo, not the gizmo, but the chisel organic brush. Make sure to play with your Z intensity to get the right kind of depth you want. And I still have back face masking enabled, or maybe disabled, since this will texture both sides, so it wouldn't hurt to have it texture both sides. Okay, that looks pretty good. 5 pepperonis. Just gonna move them around. Okay, so how things are looking. I'm gonna come back to that cheese drip here. My move brush, kind of flatten things out and play with the shape. Bit of smooth brush. Alright, that's looking like a nice slice. So definitely take some time and play around with adding Sculptris Pro to your brushes. It's definitely useful for sculpting without subdivision levels, and a great addition to Dynamesh. Import a reference image into your viewport by pressing the floor button and opening the draw menu. Navigate to this section here and click to expand the front and back options. Press the Map 1 button to open the texture menu. Next, click the Load button at the bottom in order to locate and upload your image of choice. Once done, use the scale slider to set your size. Use a horizontal offset slider to move your image left to right, and use a vertical offset slider to move your image up and down. Lastly, use an angle slider to rotate your image if needed. Click the Map 2 button to upload an image on the reverse side if needed. The Fill Mode slider here controls the overall opacity of your images. When set to 3, you have additional transparency sliders here to tweak the clarity of your reference image through your mesh. Briefly toggle off the reference images, rather disabling your floor button, or by turning your fill mode here to 0. Be aware that all of your reference images will be saved with your ZBrush project files. When it's time to export your image of your sculpted model, open the document menu and press the export button. Name and place your image in a place of your choosing and press save to export. Congrats on completing the course. I hope you found the information useful. Continue to explore, experiment, and combine features that fit your needs. Be sure to follow me on YouTube and social media to keep up with future courses and additional content. Till next time, happy sculpting.